So hello everybody. It's an honor for me to be here and to talk to you about Pinceau, a project we have been building at Nuxt Labs for a few months now. And by the way, thank you a lot to the organizers and to the whole Nuxt Labs team, especially Sebastian, that trusted me in going here to talk about this. So you may know me as Yaël Guilloux. I'm the author of some of these packages. Maybe you know Vuejs Motion or Vuejs Sound, or maybe you use Docus on your documentations. Let's start this talk with setting up the frame. So the frame here is Vue single file components. So this basically will be quite a node to Vue single file components. You may know them as the .vue files in your projects, and this is the frame in which Pinceau will be working. I just wanted to have a little talk about the philosophy of Vue and how it applies to Pinceau. I think maybe I will be wrong on that, but my view of the philosophy of Vue is abstracting the pain of your web projects by both using build tools and nicely shaped runtime APIs. And that's essentially what I tried to do with styling with Pinceau by integrating styling, a new way of writing styling into Vue. We also need, now that we have a big frame, we also need to get back at the Vue 3 current styling paradigm. So I've been going through a bit of the Vue Telescope websites. Vue Telescope basically is a tool where you can see a lot of Vue deployed websites and get stats on it. It's made by Nuxt Labs. And currently, most of the Vue websites, like not most, but almost an half of the Nuxt 3 websites are built with utility-based CSS frameworks, just like CSS or Tailwind CSS, for example. And 25% of Vue 3 apps are as well. And I think it says quite a lot on the current ecosystem. Vue and Vue 3 still offers today one of the best ways to write scoped CSS. And this has been quite an issue for a long time in different web frameworks. And this needs to be said, like, we have an amazing tooling made right in front of us when we are writing Vue components. Writing runtime styling in Vue kind of equals writing inline styling, which has some limitations. It's not a bad thing, but it has some limitations. And also, I've noticed that no one yet tried to write a Vue native CSS-in-JS package, which I think is quite weird, because we have plenty of ways. Like CSS-in-JS does have a lot of things in common with the Vue philosophy, except most of the time it does not use build time aspects. Now there is a lot of initiatives that does it. So to tell you the story of Pinceau, I need to tell you that it's Nuxt team's Nuxt Studio story. Why that? Because with Nuxt Studio, we needed to have a source of truth for our design tokens. So design tokens is basically a concept in which, your tokens, it represents the design decisions that you need to add to your project, and that can be generated from tools like Figma or Sketch or anything, and be in sync with your projects via a single file format. We also needed a GUI-compatible configuration format. It needed to support multi-layer theming. So earlier today, I think Daniel talked about extending projects, like using Nuxt Extend. So we needed something that supports that. It needed to be incrementally adaptable. So we needed a way to create a theme from a Nuxt project, then maybe adding some parts of it on top. We needed it also to work with existing tooling, because we know that most of Nuxt projects are evolving along the time, and we try to promote some smooth migrations. We also needed that to be compatible with MDC syntax. I know it's a bit rare to talk about MDC syntax when it comes to styling, but you will see later on in the presentation how we exactly do that. And of course, it still needed to provide some great DX and performances to stay on the Vue and Nuxt standards. So now that we have a bit of framing over the story we need to tell, I need to talk about some inspirations for it. So the first inspiration is Stitches. Stitches is an amazing tool made by the team of modules. I'm going to talk about it because I took the variance API from it, I took the CSS API from it, and I'm reshaped it to use it inside Vue. And they also have some really nice runtime performances, and even if Pinceau does not have so much runtime, it still needs it. Vanilla Extract as well is a very great and composable tool that promotes type-safe theming and that has an optional runtime. And the last one is Uno CSS, made by Anthony, which is amazingly great. It's an amazing build that not only promotes using utility-based CSS, but also promotes you in thinking of your project and design system as something you can build along the time and grow with your project by adding some pieces in it. And that's what I wanted to build with Pinceau as well. So now that we have a bit of framing, let's create our theme. So I will now walk through some of the features of Pinceau and then try to end that presentation with a good demo in which we can bring all this together and start playing with it. So everything in Pinceau revolves around powerful configuration. And this configuration file may look like a flat key value object, but it's not really the case. You will see that later. So first, this object will output some structured CSS variables. So that means from this object, we are creating an index, a CSS file that will get added to your project, and that will ship no runtime for that. So it will only be a CSS variables object, just like you would have written that yourself. But in addition to that, we also expose a TS file. So you will have a big object of your team, but also a nice type for it, some definitions that will be used to promote some IDE integrations, and some schema as well that will promote the usage of Nuxt Studio with your config. It also supports multi-layer theming, Nuxt extends, it supports writing design tokens right into it, but you can also use that flat format, which makes it nicer to play from the day-to-day. It's compatible with hot module replacement, so changing a value in your config will be reflected directly on your project. It ships 0 kilobits of JavaScript, I say it again. And it's fully compatible with Nuxt Studio. So earlier today, you have seen Sebastian going in Nuxt Studio and changing some colors. This is thanks to this file. And more. So there is 2 more features I want to talk about. The first is media queries management. Media queries management will let you write your media queries just as you would have written these in your CSS and then reuse them later in different contexts. It's also compatible out of the box with toolings like Nuxt.js color mode. So if you add, let's say, a sepia mode, you will have the add sepia, then you can use it however you want. And also, we have support for responsive tokens. So what is responsive tokens? It's a way of expressing your token in like an object format, which takes as a key your media queries that you defined, or dark and light. And then when you use this reference in your project, it will basically do the job for you. And when you switch light theme or switch breakpoints, then it goes all OK for you. We also have utility properties. So utility properties allows you to write your own abstractions of CSS. Here we have a good example, which is my or mx, or truncate, that is coming from Tailwind, by the way. And these little abstractions will be added to the CSS context, and then you can use it, use your own little shortcuts inside your CSS. And by the way, this won't get included in your bundle by default. So this is still 0 runtime. This is still no JavaScript shipped to your project. You can also use Pinceau in global CSS files. So it supports .css, post.css, .scss. And it has some nice little helpers that helps you to write your global CSS very easily and to stay in sync with Pinceau. So if you use the media queries helper, then it will get updated when you change the media query, etc., etc. Also, one thing that it's worth mentioning with that is Pinceau aims at making your style type safe. So if you have a token and create a reference for it somewhere, and then delete this token later on, you will get a log in your console when you build. When you build, and it will say, oh, okay, this token does not exist anymore. Do you want to do something about it? Also, this syntax does not collide with existing framework, because I know this might look like some Tailwind code, but it's not. And it's compatible with Tailwind, by the way. So we have set up our team. And now let's talk about how to style with Pinceau, how to get into our components and use this. So this is done with the CSS function. The CSS function lives in style long.ts block. I know style long.ts might sound a bit weird. Actually, I started working on Pinceau just for the theme layer. Then I thought, like, oh, I just like this syntax. Why not trying it? I tried adding the long.ts stuff to the block, and it just went like I could write TypeScript and get highlighting. ESLint was working, everything was working. I was like, oh, okay, let's keep it. And it supports all the native view features like scoped, deep, colon global. Everything you could use in regular CSS will just work in this block as well. The thing that is the most important, I guess, is that when you look at this component, you might think, oh, this man will be shipping my CSS at the runtime. And no, it's not the case. What happens instead is that when your components get built, you will be splitting the static styling and the runtime styling. So only the parts that actually uses runtime will be shipped to production, will be shipped to your bundle. The rest of it will be shipped as static CSS. And this is really good when it comes to developer experience, because you only have one context in which you can express your styling and keep it in sync with your props, but you still don't ship the whole object of your CSS as a JavaScript file that then gets interpreted by the runtime. And this is like the most common downside of CSS-in-JS. It's you basically ship your styling twice, most of the time. So it ships 0 kilobit of JavaScript by default, and it supports utils and custom properties. It supports media queries. It will also log unknown tokens, and it's fully opt-in. So if you still want to write regular CSS, you can also do that. There is 2 more features I want to talk about before going into the demo. The first one is computed styles. So computed styles is the first bit of runtime styling you can add to your project with Pinceau. And this is basically made to create a direct binding between your props and your CSS. And this can be used to keep the logic of your bindings inside your CSS, just having the props in your script. It works with local properties, and it does not only receive props. In this example, I'm using the color prop, but you can also access the whole context of your script tag inside this little function. And about the performances, this will basically be creating a single class for each component that uses the same combination of props. So what you end up with is having only a single declaration for all the same instances, for all the instances of your component that uses different props. And that is really good in terms of performances, so, because you can just slowly grow your design system, and that works very nicely. The second one is variants. So variants API is inspired by stitches. It kind of looks the same. So you can define the variants in your components and then define how the breakpoints should respond on your pages. And that is very good. Stitches kind of introduced the term immutable style, because you have to think of your component different appearances with variants. And these variants should not be caring about where should they be triggered. It's up to you when you are using this component in a parent component. It generates fully typed props, and also it collocates styles. Once again, it collocates styles from the same type of props combination. And this also works cross-components. So if you are writing the exact same variants between 2 components, it will also reuse the same class. And a good word for utility-based frameworks, it also works with $class, and you can also write variants directly as a string, and then these classes will get added to your components. So if some of you here know class variants authority, this is kind of the same, except it lives right in your components. Now some few words about performances just before going into the demo. Performances and server-side rendering. So Pinceau supports Nuxt out of the box. The theming and static styling will never be shipping JavaScript to your project. It only ships CSS. And I think it's great to know that. If you just use the theme and use static styling, so don't use variants or computed styles, this is like, it's just like writing CSS in your project, except your component will all be in TypeScript and type safe. And I think it's quite great. it goes along with script setup, and it plays really nice with script setup. Nuxt will render your runtime styles on the server. Sorry, just take a sip. So Nuxt will render your runtime styles on the server. What does that mean? Is that CSS-in-JS also has quite an issue, which is when your app boots, all your components has to generate their styles and inject that into the runtime and inject that into the DOM. And that can lead to very slow boot up time and very big layout shifts and time to interactive times, especially in big apps. Most of the time it's not the case, and giant apps have been built with CSS-in-JS libraries. But anyways, what Nuxt will do is generate all the styling from your components on server side, and then when the app mounts, then the components won't compute their own stylings. They will know that the style sheet is already present, and they won't run any JavaScript for their styling. So you still have runtime styling, but the first client is fully free for the client. So it basically equals any fully built-time CSS-in-JS, CSS frameworks. So the full engine, that full logic, weighs around 5 kilobits. It's quite small. We can go a bit deeper for that, but it's already quite small. So yeah, if you look at Docus and Alpine, the two teams that has already been distributed by Nuxt, it reaches almost 100 in both cases. We still have some pages that does not work nice, but it's still a very good score. So it's time for a demo. It's my first time as a speaker in such events, so I'm a bit stressed. But let's hope everything goes fine. So here I have my little Hello Amsterdam button. My exercise with this button, so you can already have a quick look. We can already have together a quick look about what does the IDE experience looks like. So here I am in a CSS function. I get this little typing. If I want to add a property, I can just go and look. And if I need to check the documentation, I can go in it, but I'm fine. So that is the keys part. Now the value part. Let's say I remove this color and want to add another color. I will just go here, type color. And then I can go and check between all my colors which one I want to use. I will go back on white. Oh, I made a typo. OK, this token does not exist. So as you can see, your IDE will always be in sync with your tokens definition file. And if you use a token that is missing or that has been removed, it will tell it to you. So does the console logging. You have multiple ways of configuring the debug for Pinceau, but you can easily toggle that it will break the build of your site if you are using a token that does not exist. It kind of makes your styling type safe again. So here, the exercise I want to do is converting this component, which currently only supports my primary palette, to something that supports all the tokens I have in my config. So here I have blue, red, green, yellow, gray. Well, you name it. Anyone could go here and add some tokens as well. So what I'm going to do is locally, I recreate two custom properties, which is button primary, button secondary. Whoop. Here, I will take these values and put it here. So now I want to replace these references. And what I can do to do that is just checking if I can get autocomplete from my local tokens. So here, I also get autocomplete from the tokens I created inside my components. I can save. Let's do the same here. Oh, I just closed VS Code. That's fine. Oh. We should be fine. Sorry for that. Oh, It's dev. We are back. Sorry. So now that I have made these references locally and used them, what I would like to do is to make it dynamic. So I will get into my script. And so as you see, when I want to make something dynamic, I still reach for the script. Of course, I will make it TypeScript. And here, all I need to make it is to define a prop. So we'll basically call that color. And to build that prop, I will make a little import. Here. I will also import a type. So basically, Pinceau theme import is the reference to your global theme. So the theme object that gets generated out of your config files, and out of all the config files that gets merged between all the layers. So here I will import computed style, and just define my computed style. So here what I want as a type is my key of colors. And here it's telling me it's not good because I get my autocomplete here. I want primary as the default. Oh, all right. Well, it looks fine. So now, how do I use this prop inside my CSS? It's very easy. I just define a function, pass the props here, and I have just to convert this into a template string, get my props.color, and this also should be type safe. It is. Yeah, it is. So I will do the same, just right under it. Here we are. Yeah, we'll overwrite it. And that's fine. So here we are. So now I have this little binding that is made on my component. And just by turning two single attributes into functions, I made it completely dynamic and type safe. So I can go here, white color. And here I get all the colors from my palette. So let's try to use blue, for example. It works. And now I can also get into my tokens.config file and check for one thing. What happens if I delete my blue palette? Oh, the blue tone is transparent. Oh, we also have a type error. The button gets transparent. We have a type error. Let's bring back the blue color. Right, it works. So now we have some dynamic styling for it. I would also like to have a dynamic sizing. So let's try to use variants for that. The padding is here. I will just remove the padding here. Create a size variant. Call SM, MD, LG. Inside I can use a span to keep the same structure. Padding. Here we are. So I'm just going to duplicate that. I will, for the sake of the quickness, I will just keep that. Yeah, 16, 20. So here I have an issue. I did not spread my variance object. Variance object basically gets added to the context of your component when you are creating some variance. And then I can go here, check my size. OK. Yep. So here it's SM. So MD. But now I want to make it responsive. I want my button to respond on my breakpoints. How do I do that? I turn it into an object. And here I get autocomplete from all my made queries. So what do I want to do? I want to have an initial state of msem and MD state of MD. And so if I resize it, it works. And so now, so now I will just briefly try to go on Nuxt Studio, if I have the time for it. And we'll just look at this through the eye of Nuxt Studio. So here, as you can see, I've added this little button on the landing page of it, of my documentation. So I will just try to get on the index page and see, OK, it basically looks like this. So we kind of made a syntax that is compatible with MDC. and it stays type safe in your IDE, and it will get auto-completed in this experience of Next Studio. Let's try to change the color just to see if it works. Oh, what am I writing? It works. Thanks. Just one last thing before leaving. I now want to get into design tokens. Whoop, sorry. So I'll get into design tokens. And all of this that you can see here, all these keys, all this stuff you can edit, all this has been provided by Pinceau from the team. So Docus exposed this configuration file. It works very nicely. And then Studio reads the outputs, the schema outputs of this configuration file, and it just like loads it and displays it on the site. And everything you can see here, from the naming of the keys to the labels, it gets added. So it gets added by your team. Let's try to edit some values. Oh, I think I selected the wrong one. Here. It's so fun. Let's make it to the next colors, right? Or view colors. So here we are. That was my demo for the runtime setting. So that was it for. Whoop. That was it for Pinceau. I hope you all got the concept. If you want to talk about it, just reach me out in the crowd, and I will be very happy to talk about it. There is so plenty of details I need to explain better on the docs. I still need to finish the docs, but yeah, that's it. And thank you again for listening to me.